Hey guys, uh, I am sorry about the abrupt end to part one of the tier list video, but um okay. Um yeah, sorry about the abrupt end to part one of the tier list. Um Basically, as you maybe could have been able to tell by the end of the video, where I feel like I kind of was just there for a second in silence, like just staring at the screen. That's because I was really fucking tired, and that's why I don't normally record that late. Um, so I had paused the recording, but OBS did that weird thing where it like didn't save the webcam. Um, and I had to like exit out of it to like restart it. And so I just decided to stop that recording because I didn't want to like lose the file. So this tier list is just going to be uploaded in two parts. Which normally I don't really like doing. But for this, I'm going to make an exception because I kind of made a stupid decision by trying to record a really fucking long tier list video that late at night. So yeah, we are going to continue with the tier list now as I kind of remind myself of where we kind of were. Okay, so next we have law. So law, I think, maybe, I don't know, what would you do for law necessarily? I feel like, I feel like with law, he's another one of those characters that I feel like we just see explored a lot in stories already. I don't feel like there's enough like content to make a good story with him as the main character in it. Leo could be kind of interesting because it's like maybe like I don't know, I don't really. I actually am curious on this. How old is Leo? He's he's 25 years old. Okay. And uh, Tada life span. I don't know if there's any information on this. Is there any information on the wiki at all? Oh, okay. There's not. Okay. Um, that's not super important. So Leo is 25 years old, which I guess aren't. That opens up some possibilities to me because you could potentially structure a story around what a Tintado lifestyle would have looked like before Dofi took over, since there's clearly quite a gap between those events happening. But also kind of what happens afterwards. So I'm gonna say that's kind of a fun idea. Uh, Rob Lucci, I think, is um a lot the same as Kaku, where they could kind of do a similar thing, but I just don't think it would. I think it would just be kind of okay. Um, um, Lucky Roo. We don't really know much of anything about Lucky Roo. I mean, I think this is another case like Ben Beckman, to be honest. I'm gonna put them side by side where we just literally do not know like fucking anything about Lucky Brew. And so as a result, I find myself struggling to see what the plot would be in that. Makino, I'm sorry, I have no clue what the plot would be there. I'm obviously not ranking Luffy because that would not make any fucking sense. Um, Marco. Uh, where do they put Diamond Josu? Hmm. So I'm kind of thinking the same logic that I said for Diamond Jozu, which is like I think there could be something interesting in terms of like seeing how the prominent um captains of the Whitebeard pirates got recruited into those roles. Um I'm gonna put him right next to Diamond Josu for that reason. Oh boy, Mihawk. So Mihawk, um, there is so much we don't know. There is a lot to his life that you could kind of make a story partly about like his journey to the strongest swordsman. I think that would be a fun idea. And normally that would probably land him around here, but the reason I'm gonna rank him higher is because of the fact that like normally as I've said with this tier list, like not knowing enough about the character kind of leads to like I don't know what I can't think of anything in terms of like ideas for a potential story and plot. But um I think Mihawk is kind of an exception because of the fact that there have been so many theories going around for many years and especially recently with like the stuff that Emu has been doing in Elbath. Um I think Mihawk is going to take the third character in the top tier, and I don't know if any others on this list will get up there, to be honest. Admiral Momonga, I just don't know what the plot would be. Komoria, I think you could definitely have something about like some more history between his kind of actually no. What I would want to see with Gecko Moria, and I actually think this would be a reason to make him a great MC, is because or at least it would make for a great story, is because I want to see how Moria got all of his zombies. Um, I think that that would be a really interesting idea because there's still a lot of Moria zombies that we still don't really know how he managed to get. So I think that would actually make for a very, very interesting story. This is probably the highest you're ever going to see me rank Gecko Moria on any tier list, by the way. Uh, Bon Clay, I don't know what the plot would be. And I'm sorry to say this as well, but like we already know basically everything about Nami due to her backstory, unless the theory eventually becomes true about her like be secretly being descended from the ancient kingdom and being like a princess. I have seen some theories about that, but I feel like that is way too conjecture related to base anything off of. So I think for Nami and Nojiko, I unfortunately have don't really know what a good plot would be regarding that. Okay, Hachan. I think you could maybe have something related to Arlong in terms of like how he grew up and facing fishman discrimination and kind of also maybe something about like his how his takoyaki business and how he met Hammy kind of changed his attitude after fighting the Straw Hats. But I think it would just be kind of meh. Um or Columbus, I have no clue what the plot would be. Um Oars, I think Oars might be kind of interesting because maybe he could be used to look at what the ancient giant race looked like. I think there's a fun idea in there. So Kuma, I think before Egghead, I would have put Kuma very high on this list, but because of the fact that Kuma is, by this point, arguably one of the most extensively explored and brilliantly written characters in the entire series. Um, I don't really feel like there is any area for potential story beyond that, just because we already know so much about him. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily. Ollie, man, I don't think there's any interesting ideas with that one. Hell, I don't really know what the plot would be for Pill. And Corona, something with her and Mihawk's relationship, kind of expanding on that. I guess I don't know, really. Okay, really. Hmm, that's kind of hard. Actually, not really. I was thinking about this a little bit earlier. I don't remember what I was thinking about. Um, I think it would actually be really fun to see a kind of story where, well, number one, I would love to meet how, I would love to know how he meets Sharky. That would be fun and interesting, and how he kind of got into his business at ship coding. But also, I think it would be fun to kind of maybe see a chronicle of his adventures as he tries to avoid um not as he tries to avoid as the Marines attempt and fail at bringing him in potentially until they get to the point where they just want to give up, and maybe like his interactions with Shanks and whatnot. I think that could be a fun time for sure. So I was alluding to the other Vinsmoke earlier, and here we have one of them with Reiju. Where did I put? I put Ichiji down there. It was sense that there is something going on. Really come up with anything. Um, Ryuma. So the thing with Ryuma is we already got something. We already got a story that has him in it, essentially, because we have the monster kind of One Piece spin-off like short thing where uh it was like kind of that little side story about Prime Ryuma. I don't remember when it came out. Maybe like a year and a half ago ish. I want to say. I'm gonna look it up. When did the Ryuma One Piece spin off come out? Yeah. It was January of last year. So yeah, this one we already got a whole ass spin-off on Ryuma, and it was fucking awesome. So we don't really need anything else from Ryuma as far as I'm concerned. Sabo, I think it would be fun to see how he was raised in the Revolutionary Army. Um, and maybe there could be some parallels between his own family experiences being raised as a wealthy Goan noble, and um, and that version of family versus what he feels in Revolutionaries. I think there's a fun idea there. Akainu, I think, um, would make great because I want to know. And I'm to be honest, there's a good chance we might get that in a future story for Akainu to kind of learn why he has such an extreme hatred of pirates and what defines his absolute justice. Like, what is that based on? What experience is that based on? Um, so I think that could actually be really interesting. Um, potentially. And yeah, I just feel like there's a lot to Akainu to explore that would make for a really interesting story. Um, uh, okay. Sanji, I think I said in part one that there might have been something better for Sanji and Reiju, but like the more I think about it, like I feel like Sanji's backstory in Whole Cake kind of really extensively explored um any aspect that I would have thought was maybe missing from him with that regard. So I don't really know what the plot would be for that. Then Goku, I think, would be a fun idea because I think it would be interesting to kind of get that experience, um, where we kind of see from his perspective what it was like to be a vice admiral in his prime at the same rank as Garp, and then kind of rising up to the rank of fleet admiral, and how and what his own kind of personal reflection was, and the effect that it had on him personally of the kind of change and upgrade in position to being the head of the whole navy. um Shanks, I mean, Shanks, I think in a very similar way to Ace, kind of has a lot of that main character energy. I don't think it's enough to replace Luffy, but I think that um kind of the story about how he finds Roger, and um and how we could kind of learn more about him and his connection to his Holy Knight lineage, how that affected him and his character, because we haven't really seen much of that. Um, uh, and also, like, similar with Sabo, but I think in a potentially a more compelling way, we could see like some comparisons between like how how he viewed the Roger Pirates as more of a family than how he was raised in Marie Joie. Um, so I think all of those aspects could be very interesting to me. Um, Sachi and Penguin, I think, would be like just a less interesting version of Marco, because I think there is some story there with how they met up with Law and such, but I just think that without the additional elements that I think Beppo's story might have, I think there's it's just not nearly as interesting. Um, Kiryu is still kind of a mysterious character, but I feel like he would be. I feel like it would be interesting because of that. Um, and I think there is a lot of potential to see him as a sort of like kind of see his experiences as the head of the or not the head of the jail, because that's Magellan, but like kind of any prominent position within Impel Down, I think would be actually really interesting, and maybe kind of how he maybe there could be something more that we could learn about his personality in terms of like how he was coaxed to join the Blackbeard Pirates. Like, did he get disgruntled with his position? Did he get mad at Magellan? Did he get mad at the government or the Marines or something? Or did he just get tired of doing the prisoners and want to play pirate? I think any of those being explored would just be kind of interesting. Smoothie, and spawn them as well, and I have no clue what the plot would be. Um, Gussie, I think there is something there in terms of um, like I guess exploring how she became a clone and her relationship with Vegapunk, and potentially a comparison between the older version of Gussie that we see um versus the versus this clone version that Vegapunk makes. Um, what rank is Suru? So Suru is a vice admiral. Okay. So I just want to confirm that for myself because I couldn't remember exactly. So Suru, I think would be actually really interesting. I think Suru would kind of be a really interesting version of Garp because of the fact that we just do not know nearly as much about Suru, but you could kind of assume that they were probably on comparable power levels in their prime, and I think kind of any experience in that and learning about more of Suru's career, I think would be really interesting. Um, Ruth, I think there's a great MC there because not only does he have a very fun and boisterous personality, I think would be a good MC energy, but I think there's also just so much to his entire story that we just don't know about. And we could learn about it in the future, but as of now, we don't know about it. And I think it could make for a really interesting story if he was the main focus, especially considering he was raised among the Sky People. And we still don't really know how his devil fruit works. Um, Usopp, I can't really think of anything because, we already know so much about him from him being introduced on Syrup Island to the fact that he's one of the main characters with him being a Straw Hat. So, um, Van Augur. So, there isn't a lot that we know about. This is a case where I don't feel like we know enough about Van Augur to have anything, and I'm going to put Vista with Marco and Josie to kind of complete that trilogy of that idea that I mentioned earlier. Um, Wapple. Um, I mean, maybe an expansion on the story of what happened to him under after Drum Island, but I think that, actually, no, that's just a bad idea to me. Um, Yasop, maybe there's something with expanding on his role in the crew and his relationship to Usopp, but kind of like with Ben Beckman and Lucky Roo, but something more because we do know his relationship with Usopp. I just don't necessarily think that there's enough to go off of with Yasop. I don't think he would make for a very interesting story necessarily. Okay, Zeph. So, Zeph, hmm. I think Zeph potentially, there could be something more to kind of exploring his ruthless pirate days and potentially a comparison of earlier parts of the Grand Line and what it meant to be a powerful pirate on those waters compared to what we see in the New World, respectively. I think there could be something interesting there. Uh, Water 7. Not Water 7. I was thinking of. I don't know where that came from. Sure. Um, okay, so Zora. You know what? I think it would be really funny if there was maybe a side story about the tales of Zoro or like Zoro's lost misadventures or something. And it's like all about how he just constantly gets lost wherever he goes and kind of just following where he ends up. I think that would be really funny. But also it could be like an interesting like wandering lone samurai type story potentially. I think that there is actually a lot of potential there. Um uh let's see. Caesar. Um I mean we got like a little bit more to him like in Egghead with regards to learning the history of Punk Hazard and such, but um I don't know. I feel like Caesar's already a pretty well enough explored character. I don't really see any reason for additional content necessarily. Anything with Caribou would just be an awful idea. And Caribou in a very similar, not Caribou, Horizon in a very similar way to Dofi, I think is a character that I feel like we kind of already have a pretty wide exploration of. I don't really know what any additional plot would look like. Dellinger and Diamante would just not be interesting at all. Um, and Fisher Tiger, I think, also falls into that category of a character that I think is already really roundedly explored with his backstory, and we kind of know what his influence is. Um, Hammurabi, the what? Let's go ahead and look up his name. Vice Morgan of Intel now. Tanya Ball. That's I was completely getting that wrong the past few videos, but he's kind of a bum character, so I don't really care that much. Um, let's see. So, hmm, yeah, I don't think there's anything interesting for him. Um, Kinemon, I mean, again, with like him and the rest of the scabbards, to be completely honest, I think that he's already a pretty thoroughly explored character. Like through the Odin flashback. I don't think there's anything interesting coming out of Ors. I want to know like more about Magellan, kind of where he came from, how he became like the warden of Impel Down, how he got his Delph. I think there's a fun idea in there. Uh Monet, bad idea, whatever it is. And Pedro, I feel like is a character that's already thoroughly explored enough. Um Treble could actually be semi-interesting because, before we see him with before the first time that we see him is like when Dofe as a kid is kind of joining their little gang, and I think it would be interesting to kind of see where he came from. Again, probably the highest you're ever going to see ranked treble on any One Piece tier list. And Virgo, I just have no idea what a interesting story would be from that. But yeah, um, this is the completed tier list. How long was this second part? 34 minutes. Yeah, I definitely could not have made it through one recording. Hopefully you don't mind the splitting into two parts. I apologize if the um first part does have a really awkward ending. Um but yeah, I will remind, I didn't mention this in the beginning of this part of the video, but, the second part, but I was not ranking these characters on the current One Piece story if they replace Luffy as the MC, because I think just in a lot of cases that would not work. Instead, what I rank this on is, would there be an interesting story idea there with these characters as the main characters of that story that I think could rival the interesting ideas of the current One Piece story, but like set in the One Piece world. Um, but yeah, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you don't mind the two-parter this time. This will definitely not be a regular thing in terms of videos. But yeah, regardless, I do hope you enjoyed this video. This is a very fun tier list to make. If you have any more ideas for me, then let me know in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.